Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello, Dumela, welcome. We are happy to welcome you to another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We're going to talk about dual citizenship, guys. I'm very excited about this one. Obviously, we're going to touch on entrepreneurship, which is what we're about. We're about life-changing business education. We're about infusing, energizing, and inspiring, and that's what we're here for. My guest needs little or no introduction. Why I'm saying that is because she's been here before, and her name is?
Sithabile Mathe.
Yeah, her name is Sithabile Mathe of the firm?
My company name is Morula Designs.
Morula Designs. And we'll go into detail about that. But before we start our conversation, can I just ask you to hit that subscribe button and, of course, the notification bell so that as and when we drop these episodes, you are able to benefit. And if I can be shameless about this, we also need your support. Your subscriptions really make a huge difference, guys, so we can reach more people and impact more lives. Thank you so much and welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Emma. I think a good starting point would be for you to give a mini introduction for those who may not have watched the previous episode with you here on Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom.
So, my name is Sithabile Mathe. I'm a practicing architect, and I established my practice in 2006. It was registered in 2003, but I established it in 2006. In Botswana, we've done work all over the world, and also in Botswana.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're based here in Gaborone. Our practice is here in Gaborone.
Yes. And of course, you don't do just any architecture. You specialize in certain type of architecture.
Actually, not necessarily. In fact, it's actually the opposite, because as a practice, we are multidisciplinary. So we do the design of buildings, but we also do a lot of urban design and town planning. We do interior design work, and we do landscape architecture as well. The idea being that we really want a holistic approach to the development, of buildings and the development of cities. So very much about being multidisciplinary and not restricting ourselves to one particular field. Just making sure that the different fields are integrated, integrated.
Sometimes we assume we understand things. For instance, we're going to talk about dual citizenship, but perhaps before we do, we want to know what citizenship is. I may assume that I know what it is. And as someone who's really gone into the weeds, as you did this case that we're going to talk about just now, perhaps you can define citizenship for us.
Yeah. Most people assume that citizenship means a passport. Right? That's the symbolic piece of document that we have that often identifies people in terms of citizenship. But actually, that's just an administrative tool. Citizenship is really much more about identity, about who you are as a person, what cultural and social norms that you associate yourself with that define you. It's about your roots. It's about your origins, it's about how you define those origins, and it's about the security and the safety of what you've known as a family, as a bond of people around you. So it's very many things, and our constitution is very clear in defining the multiple ways and the multiple aspects that are incorporated in determining what our citizenship actually means.
And does it have to do with being a tribesperson or a tribesman, or only belonging to a particular tribe? Is there any linkages between being a tribesman and being a citizen?
I think, unfortunately, in our context, we like to use one as a definition of the other, which I think is extremely incorrect, particularly in our society as Botswana, as a republic, right? So tribalism or ethnic identity, or whatever you want to call it, that is a prescription of a culture, a particular culture with its particular language and its particular norms. And those norms are defined within one. It may be an ethnic group, in terms of color, white, black. It may be cultural, defined by language and social norms. But in a republic like ours, we are a multicultural society. We are made up of multiple ethnicities, multiple cultural groups. So we definitely cannot be using our social or our cultural identity to say that is a definition of whether we are a citizen or not. Yeah,
that's very interesting. And perhaps we could start talking about the case. But maybe before we do, since I talk mostly to entrepreneurs and business people, what would you say is the relevance of this momentous case to entrepreneurship in Botswana, entrepreneurship internationally?
So one of the biggest impacts, I believe, let's take it from the perspective of Botswana, because that's really the starting point. As a country, it's social mobility, right? As a country, we are in the midst of experiencing one of the worst brain drains that we have ever seen. We have our young and most talented, often they train abroad, or they have opportunities for scholarships, etc., to train abroad. They live and work. When they finish studying, they're often living and working in other economies, being exposed to greater opportunities than we often seem to be able to offer them at home. And some of them who then don't feel that our society is progressing at the same rate as the society that they're living in. And by progressing, I mean, access to basic services, power, energy, water, housing, the quality of life that they have. When Botswana is competing with those aspects, if you then give that young person an opportunity for a citizenship in another place that is better, and by better I mean it provides better services to its citizen as opposed to its resident or its visitor, then the attraction is for young Botswana is to remain where they are. By giving them the opportunity for dual citizenship, they don't have to make an emotional decision that severs them from this country, because over time things change. I'm a classic example. When I finished university, I think I swore I would never come home. Within 5 to 10 years, I definitely wanted to come home, and I definitely wanted to build a life here, and I definitely wanted to raise my children here. So dual citizenship means that had I taken up the citizenship of another country at that time, which I did not, I wouldn't have been as torn. I would have had the ability to move back and forth between these two economies and contribute to my own without feeling that like I'm making a momentous sacrifice.
Yes.
Right? And that's really the key thing in terms of trying to stem the loss of skills, is giving the people the opportunity to easily move back and forth between and cross-pollinate, between different...
That connection, would I be right in saying there's not a single Motswana who does not have roots, connections, or interconnections in another country.
Yeah.
We all have interconnectivity with, for instance, I have relatives in South Africa. I have, in the case of South Africa, we had a time when the whole of the Northwest province was part of Botswana land. It was called British Botswana land. So if you look at it like that, for the longest time we've been the same people and had roots in other parts of the African continent. Before we talk about internationally, even if you think in terms of Zimbabwe or Zambia or Namibia, we all have connections in those places.
Absolutely. So I think the downside of us as a family being the family that brought this case forward is that it is immediately apparent. My husband is white, he's European. It's immediately apparent that this is maybe about, places and cultures that are far away from here. But actually the real crux of this case, the real beneficiaries of this case are not people that are in the minority like my husband and I and our children. It is actually all Botswana who live in all our border communities, to Namibia, to South Africa, to Zimbabwe, everyone who grew up. And I remember what this was like as a child. We used to cycle to Plumtree to buy bread and milk. And then suddenly one day you needed a passport because Zimbabwe had happened and borders had come up and etc.
Zimbabwe,
exactly. And my aunt found herself, 2 kilometers on the other side of what she thought was one homogeneous homestead. So the impact is not actually on families like us. The benefit, the real beneficiaries are everybody who has found themselves in this conundrum because they live in these border communities.
And one cannot help but consider that, all this started with the 1884 Berlin Conference, where we were not even participants, where people just in Berlin, Europe, just carved up the
random lines,
and then we're stuck with them to this day.
And to this day, we then want to let these lines define us, separate our families, create conflicts, and this is for me the first step towards recognizing, freeing ourselves of some of those chains.
Okay, you're going to share the background of this case, but tell me, how does victory feel? How does it feel to be victorious against a monstrosity like government? People think of Gorment as this big gigantic, huge thing. How does it feel to overcome government?
I think I have focused very little on overcoming government. That has actually never been my focus. My focus has always been focusing on all the people that were going to benefit. In this process, a lot of people were not able to join the case formally, so they have written letters of support and described their own circumstances, and these letters of support are a part of the submissions that went into the High Court case. And in meeting and interacting with all of those people, I think the focus was, oh my goodness, think of all the problems and all the issues that this is going to solve. So, the reference to Goliath and all of that, that has never been my focus. My focus has been just imagine how many people this is going to impact and impact positively. And that feels good. And that's really my focus.
Before we talk about your particular case, can you give one or two examples of the circumstances involving other people who've benefited from this case? And then we'll narrow it down to yourself.
So I think as the stories started coming out, I'm going to share the horrible ones because I think it's, like I said, we as a family, we have options, right? We actually had options, or the impact would have been awful for us, but it has been way worse for other people. the story that the person who always is top of my mind is a young girl who came to Botswana when she was 3 or 4 years old, and both her parents were Zimbabweans when she came to Botswana. They naturalized before she turned 18. Her other siblings are born here and born to her 2 parents who naturalized as Botswana. So her other siblings have no issues in terms of citizenship. But because she was, at the time of her birth, her parents were still Zimbabweans. By the time she then, she's 14 or 15, both her parents die, tragically. She's now an orphan. She's never been to Zimbabwe. She doesn't know her family. She's grown up. It is the neighbor who continues to raise her and her 2 younger siblings. She then, when she turns 16, she gets her romang because her parents had naturalized. When she turns 21 and she needs to renew her omang, she is then told that she needs to renounce her Zimbabwean citizenship. She's never been to Zimbabwe. She doesn't, all she has is her birth certificate from there, nothing else. No family, no support. The embassy doesn't know who she is, etc. She needed critical HIV medication that was given, that she had been on for several years. When she turns 21, she no longer has an omang and is unable to receive that medication from government.
Oh my God.
Right? Being a citizen or grown up here, lived here, studied, doesn't know anywhere else. And for me, it is the manner in which this law has been implemented punitively, right? So since she turned 21, she's been, whatever medical and social support that she has been getting has been through community support. Where officials at immigration are unable to look at this case and say, just from a humanitarian perspective, we need to do X, Y, Z. So it has been, there's, stories of...
So she's disqualified because she's not a Motswana.
Yeah, or she cannot access public health care because without her romang, she is defined as not being a Motswana. Right? So for me, it has been the punitive implementation of this law, right? We've heard about, hordes of young police officers who woke up one day and were told that they were going to lose their job as police officers because it seems they have the potential, to have access to another citizenship. We have
What do you mean by that? Potential how?
No, as in they had been either, you can imagine if you live in Ramotsa and you go to Rustenburg to give birth or to Zeerust, right? Or you live in Jakalas and it's closer to go and give birth in Plumtree than it is to go in as a mother than to go all the way to Francistown. Suddenly that act.
So citizenship accrued from where you are born, not from your parents necessarily.
It's more complex than that because the Citizenship Act has changed over the years and created multiple opportunities for confusion. So, I can talk a little bit about the background of
Yeah, perhaps there's a good time to do that.
But there's multiple examples of how. The last one I want to touch on is...
So they get letters saying you're about to be fired because there's a possibility that you're born outside the
You're
country.
about to be fired, you need to renounce your other citizenship, and they don't even know what that other citizenship often is. The last example that I think is important is, you'll have a student who's at UB, a Motswana student who's at UB, first year, second year, third year, the omang expires. They've turned 21 somewhere in their journey of education, and suddenly they can't get continued government sponsorship because they are deemed to have had another citizenship, or they need to renounce that in order to retain their Botswana citizenship, and their studies stop.
While they're deciding.
Not even whilst they're deciding, whilst they're trying to, in many cases, they're not even aware that they have this other citizenship. Right? So it's those kind of cases where, those are the real beneficiaries,
now,
in my view.
Did these people become part of your case? People with these different circumstances, how does it work? Was it a class action lawsuit?
Yeah. So because when you sue or when you take somebody to court for something, there are a lot of financial liabilities that come with that. Let's imagine a situation where we had lost the case, and we had lost the case with costs. Then
God forbid.
God forbid, for sure, but we had to be prepared for that financial liability, and also the ongoing financial liability of having to pay the lawyers, for the work that they've done. So many people were not in the financial situation to take on that commitment, which is why we had what we called Friends of the Court. So they contributed by writing letters that the judges would see that there are other people who are impacted by this. But
not even affidavits, just letters.
Some were affidavits and some were letters.
Okay.
Yeah, it depended on people's circumstances. Yeah.
Okay. And now we get to the heart of the matter. Just take us through the whole story. Walk us through how it all started and how it culminated in you saying, enough is enough, I'm filing a lawsuit.
It started with my own experience. When I came back from abroad with 2 children, and we were in the process of applying for the new e-passports for the children and for myself. And I go to immigration with the children, and we decide with my husband that let's do the children first, so you can take them away, and then I'll stay behind because it's a long queue. So we do the children. In terms of the law, if at the time of your birth, one of your parents is a Botswana, you are entitled to Botswana citizenship. So the children are then given passports on the basis that their mother is Botswana at the time of their birth, and it doesn't matter, because they're under 21, it doesn't matter that their father is a foreigner. Off they go. It's then time for me to do my passport. And my father was born in Plumtree. In 1937, Botswana did not exist in 1937. In 1960s, it was Botswana land. In 1966, when Botswana became Botswana, anyone who was born outside of the Bechuana land boundaries had to naturalize, right? So when I am renewing my e-passport, they say to me, we need to see your father's naturalization certificate. And I said, what?
Not Umang, but naturalization certificate.
Exactly. I said, I'm sorry, but you've given this man, when you started introducing Umangs, you gave him an Umang. My mother has an Umang, right? But you want to see his naturalization certificate now? No. And because you've given him an Umang, right? Either you withdraw that Umang because you believe it. If you believe
what is prompting there? Is it a particular section in the Act?
Nothing.
Or is just some difficult bureaucrat who's being autocratic?
It is what I considered, what felt a little bit like a cleanup campaign. I can start how Jewish people must have felt. We need to, there are people that possibly shouldn't be citizens, and we're cleaning up. It really felt like that.
So they write a letter?
No, you're at the counter and they refuse to. And I'm saying to the lady, you've just processed my children's passports on the basis that I am a Botswana. And now when I'm trying to process my passport, you are questioning that. How does that make sense? It doesn't. And a lot of people experience this. There was a man standing behind me, an elderly man in his early 80s who had come all the way from Shakawe way, and he was like, there's nobody in my village who's alive who remembers me being born, right? I have no papers. I've never been anywhere else. I'm born in Shakawe. I've lived in Shakawe my whole life, right? And now you're asking me for a proof of birth in Botswana and all. I was there when the Khosi in the village was born. He doesn't remember my birth. So it was this national process and it affected everybody in border communities, where you are having to produce documentation, but you've literally lived nowhere else. right?
Yes.
So that for me, that day, that was the first awareness of this process. And then I go and read the act, and then I realize that, of course, my children are going to have to choose when they turn 21. And that was absolutely the trigger. I was like, we cannot be dividing
Did you go
out.
ballistic when you discovered that?
Maybe not ballistic, but I felt very alienated. I suddenly felt that
A little bit disappointed,
Yeah.
almost depressed a bit.
disappointed in my own country, you know. I definitely.
And I think
So anyway, this is in 2007 or 8. And then around 2012, we started writing letters to immigration. Started trying to have meetings with different permanent secretaries, different directors, and they kept saying there's some draft coming. Yes, we're doing something about it. And then I think it was in 2017 they came out with the first draft, and that's when. And I read that draft, and to summarize,
it was what, the new Citizenship Act.
yeah, a revision to the Citizenship Act that was supposed to, amongst other things, enable dual citizenship. But that 2017 Act was written in a way that essentially said there'll be a committee of people, and this committee, made up of the director and the this and the this and this, will look at each case on its merits and decide who, and the president will have the right to, and
The final right to say yes or no.
yes or no.
In other words, you can appeal to the president.
I get. And you start to introduce all sorts of subjectiveness to something that should be an inalienable human right. You start to it's like how people become citizens naturalized right now. It is an incredibly subjective process. You that is so open to abuse. It's open to manipulation. It is not a straightforward process that says you've been here for 10 years.
In other words, your case hadn't solved that one. That problem still remains.
That problem still
of naturalization.
Yeah, it still remains. It absolutely remains, and
you just assisted with one aspect of
with the first step.
Yeah,
the first step, because the naturalization process it's still very subjective, open to manipulation. In all other countries, including my husband's country. In Norway, you live there for X number of years, you pay your taxes, you don't ever break the law, it's automatic, right? If you apply for it, then if you fulfill that criteria of I've paid my taxes, I live here, and I haven't committed a crime, and I fulfill XYZ, that's it, with clear criteria.
Perhaps there's a little bit of paranoia about people's land being taken away. There's that paranoia, whether it's justified or not, I don't know.
Paranoia is not the word. I think we need to call it what it is, which is xenophobia.
Yeah. Which is even more severe.
Yeah. We need to call it what it is.
Yeah. And then getting back to...
So that was the journey. So I read that draft 2017 and then I said, we're going to court, because this is not what we're looking for. This doesn't treat people equally. It doesn't give anyone equal access in terms of what a Citizenship Act should look like.
And it had was it still a draft then, or it had become law?
No. It was a draft. It had been presented for discussion and for circulation. It was a yellow.
Yeah. Did it eventually become law?
No.
Okay.
It didn't.
And then, at this point, you haven't received any validation from a legal person or a lawyer?
No. That was after reading that draft document, that draft's revised Citizenship Act. That's when we then engaged a lawyer, who has been phenomenal.
Wow. He's a good lawyer.
He's fantastic.
And what was his immediate reaction? Well, it's going to be tough. I'm not so sure. Let me do a bit of research.
No, his immediate reaction was yes, yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what happened next?
Yeah, then we started the legal process, the notice to AGs, and then the whole legal steps towards submitting it as a formal matter at the High Court, and then the hearing.
Let me know if this question is difficult for you. Did you bring it as an action or an application? Do you know the difference?
No, I don't.
Okay. The application is when you just do it on paper with affidavits, whereas the action is a summons, but later, as you know, later you call witnesses to the stand. And
then it would have been an application.
Okay, it was an application. Tell me how it went.
At the High Court, it went very well.
The arguments, I want to hear your arguments in a nutshell. I know you're not a lawyer, but the arguments from the other side, from the government side.
So, I mean, our argument is very simple. It's that citizenship is a right which is enshrined in the Constitution and should never be taken away. It should only be taken away in the most extreme of circumstances. And the Constitution doesn't even have examples of what those circumstances would be. I mean, even in terms of treason, your citizenship is not taken away. You just serve time for the crime of treason, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So that was the basic fundament. But the building of the argument for us as a family was demonstrating that for our family, our children have actually grown up in two countries, with two cultures, two families, that all of the things that are enshrined in the Constitution as a definition of citizenship, our children have experienced that in two different countries, linguistically, socially, culturally, in terms of roots, and demonstrating that you are now placing them in a situation where they have an equal affiliation to two countries. What is going to be the basis of their choice? And making them take that choice is dividing a family, right? Which it would have
needlessly so.
Needlessly, for no benefit, for no reason. You know, and that's not right. You know, simply put.
And it's unconstitutional.
And it's unconstitutional. Absolutely.
There's specific provisions in the Constitution that it contradicts.
Absolutely. So, and then government's position was saying that actually there's no way in which they stand to suffer, was their first argument. Then they said, and anyway, we have this thing called the blue card. You know, once we take their Botswana, if they give up their Botswana citizenship, they can get a blue card, which allows them to come and go as they please. And the judges...
Can they vote? Can they only...
No. The judges said, demonstrate how show me the legal instrument that says a blue card is the same as citizenship. And of course, the blue card is an administrative instrument. It's like a driver's license. It is not
even provided for in the Act.
It's not provided for in the Act and the regulations. It's a temporary administrative instrument. If somebody wakes up tomorrow and says it needs to go, it can. And there'll be absolutely no actual legal recourse.
Importantly, can you vote with a blue card?
No, you can't vote.
You can't do most basic things.
No, you can't do the basic things that are part of your rights as a citizen. So those were kind of the arguments, and they were very thin at the High Court level. So we then, the 3-judge bench then ruled in our favor.
It was unanimous. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. And
an eloquently, beautifully drafted judgment. It's actually such a pleasure to read because you see that they have truly understood they've really understood what citizenship is and our description of what that is.
Is there anything from that judgment that you want to share that is beautiful, sublime, worth repeating?
Just the fact that one's connection to a place is so intangible. It's so difficult to describe, but it's very real. It's very real, and each individual who belongs to a particular place understands how unbreakable that connection to identity, culture, language is.
Do you remember these judges? Or the one who read the judgment?
No, right now, not off the top of my head. It's so
Okay.
long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up.
And of course, it was taken on appeal.
Yes.
And what were the grounds of appeal?
So again, this is then interesting because they had 6 weeks to appeal. Literally, on the last day, 40 minutes before the deadline.
And you would have been looking at the watch, right?
I was. We were actually holding a bottle of bubbly ready to go.
Yeah, to celebrate.
And we were served 40 minutes before that they were appealing. And they didn't, at that time, they didn't give reasons. They just said appealing this, appealing this, appealing that. And then they had the entire period from then up until the date was set for the hearing at the appeal court to say what their reasons for appealing were. And I think, as you know, a week before the hearing at the High Court of Appeal, the government withdrew its appeal. A week before.
But I mean, the other processes before, such as settling the record, such as preparing heads of argument and exchanging documents. I mean, I've done this a million times. Why didn't they withdraw it during those many stages?
That is a question that only they can answer. But for the appeal court, they did not submit heads of arguments. They had a year and a half
to have done so.
They did not at all.
Whereas you submitted yours.
Yes.
Did they tender costs?
Yes, we have been awarded the case with costs.
Okay. It saddens me because it's my tax puller that are paying for that case. It is me as a citizen.
Yeah.
And yet I have nothing to do with the decisions. Sometimes life can be unfair.
Yeah.
Now, what is the immediate aftermath of that decision, and how actually is it going to be implemented exactly?
Yeah. So I think, and this statement I'm making for the benefit of the current permanent secretary, because there is a perception that there's something that government needs to do now. They need to sit down and redraft and redo and etc., etc. That is not the case. It's very simple. Section 15 is no longer part of the Citizenship Act. So the section that speaks to issues around dual citizenship and its offending sections are no longer a part of the Act. So government doesn't actually need to do anything. When the kids turn 21 and they had the opportunity, or they had another citizenship, government does nothing. They just renew the Omang. And then renew.
Have they not done any of that?
Well, no, they haven't done. Well,
I mean, when you go to Omang and try to get your kids Omang or the passport, do you get stopped?
So the day of the appeal
Being
case.
withdrawn?
No. So the appeal was withdrawn, but we still had to go to the date of the hearing and present this. They had to present this withdrawal to the 5 judges, who then had to consent to the withdrawal and finalize the case at that level. From that appeal court hearing, we went as a family straight to immigration.
With the judgment in hand?
No, not even the judgment in hand. We just went and said, we're here for our daughter's Omang. And it became a circus because there's still a perception that something needed to be done. And so it wasn't until we made the officials there understand that by denying my daughter her Omang that day,
They're in contempt
they're
of
in
court.
contempt of court. So all other people that are in a similar situation must just remind, when they go to get their Omang, it's the same process that you would renew an Omang for anybody else. Bring us your old Omang, okay, take your picture, do your fingerprints, 5 pula, see you in X number of months.
Would it be wrong for me to suggest that you post in your socials a copy of the judgment and then share it among all the affected communities so that they can
we
actually...
have.
You have?
Yeah,
you're doing that?
Yeah, on Facebook it's available.
Yeah.
And anyone who's asked for it, I've sent it to them on WhatsApp.
Yeah. So really it would be helpful to make that available.
But at a very basic level, there is a perception that something needs to be done. The only thing that needs to be done is the human human resource that says, oh, okay, you are one of those affected. Okay, here's
your
here's your omang back, or fill out this form to get a new valid omang, in the same way that anybody else renews their omang document.
What about passports?
The omang is really the key document. Once you have your omang, as I said, a passport is then an administrative instrument. It allows you to...
So that's what you sorted out within that first week?
Yes, we made sure we got her omang, and we made sure we got her her passport. And I think once the officers understood that they were at risk of being in contempt of court, I have to say that they were very helpful, very supportive. And I think for them as well, it's a huge relief. They've had to watch these human tragedies unfold and have not felt empowered to assist people because the law has been very clear about some of these things.
So as we speak, they're supportive.
I'm hoping they are supportive with everybody else.
Conduct, in your case?
In my case, they ultimately were.
So can we safely say the problem is dead and buried?
No, we can't, because there is still that simmering issue of xenophobia. You know, for many people, many people consider some people more Botswana than others, and
because you hear things like, no, this one is naturalized. Yeah,
which is, we can't do that. We cannot be saying things like that. We cannot be thinking things like that anymore. When a person, and for me, when someone naturalizes, they've taken an adult, conscientious decision to be a part of your society. How beautiful is that? It's phenomenal.
Superb. Yeah.
And for many, they have then had to sacrifice, or historically, they have had to sacrifice or give up another social connection to somewhere else. And they've done that to say, this is where I want to be. You know, I'm not saying, I don't want to use the word grateful, but you know, I'm so proud when people see how beautiful my country is and they want to be a part of it. That just makes me so happy. You know, why are we now feeling like we can't share this?
Tell me, in terms of what is intended by the judgment or by the law, since now the law has been clarified, you can apply for land in Norway, you can apply for land here, you can have precisely 100% of the rights and privileges that accrue to all citizens of these two countries. Am I right?
Yeah. So I don't have Norwegian, let's be clear, I don't have Norwegian citizenship. I only have Botswana.
Because you haven't applied.
No, I haven't applied, and this case was not about me applying.
Yeah.
This case, the focus of this case was about my children not losing what was their birthright.
Yeah.
Their birthright was the Botswana and the Norwegian.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm just trying to understand, in your case, in other countries that don't have these complexities, if you choose to apply in Norway, you qualify, they give it to you.
Yeah, they give it
to you. So the reason you are not have Norwegian citizen, especially post the judgment, is because you've elected not to apply, or you haven't chosen to apply yet. Why not? Why haven't you applied for Norwegian? Now that the situation is clear, you can have both.
I'm sure I could. That, like I said, and I haven't really reflected over it. It hasn't been. It hasn't been the focus, because in Norway I'm a permanent resident. And actually, as a permanent resident, I am allowed to vote in local elections. I can't vote in national elections, but for your local authority, you can vote. So So there, we're very advanced in terms of understanding that here is a member of the society who's permanently resident here, who has paid tax, who has contributed. This is the extent to which they are allowed to participate and feel included in the society.
So practically speaking, then, you have those two passports. How do you decide which one to produce when you get to the airport?
You produce them freely. My
Both.
daughter left freely with two passports.
Or are you required to produce both?
You can if you want to, but
No,
there's no
I don't
need.
know how it works
But
practically.
it has
I'm just
no,
curious.
It has no administrative. So when she flew in, she no longer had a valid Botswana passport. She had the passport, but it was no longer valid because they hadn't renewed it.
Yeah.
But she had a valid Norwegian passport. So they stamped her Norwegian passport, right? Then the case, etc., we get a new passport for her. When she left, she stamped out her Norwegian passport and also stamped out her Botswana passport. And it was not illegal.
And it's real. And if she's forgotten the Norwegian one and has a Botswana one, still no problem.
No issues.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's really, really liberating, and I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing because a lot of let's not hide behind the fact there are a lot of people who have quietly held both for all sorts of circumstances. What was key for me was my children must feel free. You know, there have been comments to say, "Oh, Sita, surely you could have sorted this out in other ways." I said, "No."
Which other ways?
You know, negotiated these manipulative, subjective processes that I'm referring to. So I just wanted it to be clear that this is something that is for everybody and it's equal for everybody. And my children can be free and know that, you know,
I'm with you.
there were no questionable issues around speak to this one, speak to that one.
Let's talk a little bit about the global context in terms of other people in the diaspora. How has been the reaction of other Botswana, especially in distant lands, and could describe how it's been since the judgment, especially after the Court of Appeal judgment?
It's just been positive. Actually, so there's a group on Facebook that we are part of called Dual Citizenship for All Botswana that has been like the
driver,
the cheerleader in the background through this process. They've, you know, submitted petitions historically. You know, it's an active group. So in that group, I didn't expect any negative responses. Everybody was super positive. When BW government posted the notice from the government, the official notice after the case of what had transpired, in that platform, I was thinking these are not affected people, so it'll be interesting to see what their response is. And even on that BW government page, not a single negative. Really, not a single negative. You know, hundreds and hundreds of comments, and everyone is like, "Yay! About time! Yay! Wonderful!"
Okay.
Yeah. So the response has just been positive. You know.
So, do we have an idea as to the number of Botswana who are affected by this, in terms of across the world? How many people have suddenly acquired double citizenship?
Because it was illegal. If anyone had it before, I think I don't know what those numbers are. I really don't.
But are people rushing to come in and regularize that situation?
I hope so.
But is it happening?
I don't know. We'd have to ask government for those numbers. If they've kept a record of them.
Since the judgment, has anybody said that they've encountered any difficulty?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Same thing where they're told, no, we're not quite ready. You need to come back later, etc., etc.
Until you then produce a judgment and remind them that they are.
Yeah.
So Meaning what? Most people have been able to go through.
Yeah, I would love to know. I've only heard of 2 or 3 cases that have contacted me directly. And what I have said to everybody is, if you experience any problems, please go and speak to our lawyers. They will assist you.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a woman, what would you say as a general principle to young women and women generally who may feel hard done by the laws or the prescriptions of the laws in this country? Do you have any general advice in that regard?
If in your gut you know that something is wrong, that something is not right, make sure you do everything in your power to make it right, to correct it. Don't be afraid. As women in Botswana, we are raised to suffer in silence. Culturally, we are raised to accept all sorts of, and we're still in many communities perceived as children. We are minorities.
Even to this day?
Even to this day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, someone asked the comment, why are these kind of cases being brought by women only? As if it would have been better if the case had been brought by a Motswana man. So I would just say, I'm extremely grateful for our courts, because in this particular case, they have seen reason and they have adjudicated accordingly.
Yeah.
But the problems have to be brought before them, because our other mechanisms of dealing with these issues are completely dysfunctional.
When I mentioned to someone that I'm coming to interview about this issues, they said, I thought Unity DAO long resolve this issue. And there's that thinking that there's similar situations. Are you able to clarify, maybe compare and contrast?
Yeah. So our case is built on the Unity DAO case. Prior to Unity DAO, Botswana children could only be given citizenship from their father. So, it's not that long ago where Botswana women could not confer citizenship to their children, only men. So the Unity DAO case made sure that Botswana men and women could confer citizenship to their children, whether they were married or not. Right? So, and that was a key thing, because my children were born at a time when that had become law. So my children have Botswana citizenship because I, as a Motswana woman, was now empowered to confer citizenship to them when they were born.
So this extends it a little further. I'm saying this because I think I saw you in the press taking pictures with the famous Unity DAO.
Yeah.
So you took the law a bit further.
Yeah.
In the sense.
So I don't know if we say took the law further, but had she not done what she had done, I would have not been able to do what I have done. My case would not have a founding, because I would have been unable to give my children citizenship and therefore unable to contest for them to keep that citizenship when they turn 21.
That is very interesting. But earlier when we were speaking, you said it's not all over, because there's still an aspect that is unclarified. Can you go back to that point again, especially with regard to applying for naturalization?
Yeah, in my personal view, it is all over. But what I'm saying is, if you look at the Citizenship Act, let's say you've given up your citizenship before, and now that it's not criminal to hold 2 citizenships, you want to reinstate your citizenship. There is a process to follow for that, which is, you provide the following documentation, and it's fairly straightforward. But there is a perception, and I call it a perception, administratively at immigration, that if you've naturalized, like you're a child and you're 15 years old, and you naturalize to become a Botswana because your parents have become Botswana before you have turned 18 or 21, I can't remember which two of it is. They are now claiming that because you've naturalized, this doesn't apply to you, which is ridiculous. Because you've become a citizen, whether it is by birth, whether it is by heritage, whether it is by naturalization. And I'm saying that that's where the xenophobia comes in, because the choice to interpret the judgment in that light, you are now saying that instead of focusing on the fact that at 21 this person was a Botswana citizen, how they became a citizen is immaterial. Was it birth? Was it heritage? Was it naturalization? It's immaterial.
It is.
They are, and that's what I mean by the unfinished. And the unfinished is in people's understanding, is in the understanding.
Why don't you take it to the top? What does the Minister of Home Affairs say? What is the Office of the President saying? Shouldn't there be a directive from one of those offices to clarify the situation?
In my view, a directive is not necessary because the case has talked about citizenship, irrespective of how that citizenship is acquired. It's as straightforward as that. Irrespective of how citizenship had. If at 21 you had to access or you had to...
But perceptions are difficult things to deal with.
Yeah.
There's this incorrect perception. Shouldn't it be addressed
absolutely.
At the highest level?
It should be. Without a doubt.
Is that something you're willing to undertake, or you leave it to others?
I'm willing to undertake it, but, I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician, and I have no wish to be a politician. That's not where my skills
this is a
lie.
high-profile case. Shouldn't it be easy to call for a meeting with the minister to say, Mr. Minister, if people are confused, just clarify this. It's like this, like this, like this. Am I being too simplistic?
You are. When people have egg on their face, it's always very difficult to crawl their way back from egg on their face.
They're taking it
personally.
Egos are in play.
Yes.
But this is just government action.
This is a national issue. And I am actually really disappointed because I felt like they had the opportunity for a positive story. Because they withdrew, right? Withdrawing means I have changed my mind because I realized what I was planning to do was a bad idea, right? So as government, they took a conscious decision to withdraw, not at the High Court, but at the Appeal Court, right? That's a very positive thing. I don't understand why we are not trying to gain the political positiveness of that as a story, right? Okay. And why we are continuing to, talk about these narratives of, birth and naturalization and what. Citizenship is citizenship.
That's it.
Yeah. And the next issue
are these the soft issues you're referring to?
Yeah. These are the soft issues because they have to do with people's emotions, people's perception,
So you've to me, you should actually be celebrated as a national hero. I commented on social media when this came out, and I'm just surprised that there's still some kind of cloud hanging over this. I'm really surprised. Do you think, do you have any ideas how we can overcome that?
I don't know. But like I said, for me, this was a wonderful opportunity for us to say, look at who we are as a nation. Look at how robust our courts are, and they've come to this decision. And we in government also support the outcome because we chose to withdraw. It is an opportunity, I think, to say this is such a positive thing for us on so many levels.
I know for a fact that my sister-in-law used to take every opportunity, every time HE speaks, whether it's a Kotla, whether HE is in Norway or Sweden, she would raise this issue for years and years and years. Isn't this an ideal opportunity for the two of you to go to HE and say, the issue that I've been bothering you with has been clarified by the courts. Please now help us implement it and make a public announcement about this. Is this suggestion out of order, or you think it makes sense?
I don't think it's out of order. But it's not just the president that needs to speak. Everyone needs to speak.
But he has the bully pulpit. He has the bully pulpit, as they call it in America. He has the big pulpit to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Are you going to take me up on that? Because you said there are soft issues and hard issues. Is this a hard issue?
Possibly.
What hard issues did you have in mind?
I've spoken about the xenophobia issue. That's a hard issue in my view. What other people have spoken about is related to, but you can't have a president who has 2 citizenships. You can't have the head of the army, etc., etc. And for me, those things are actually quite simple, because not every one of the 2.2 million is going to stand before the country and say they are all running for president at the same time.
Never.
That's one person. And only when that one person has come to a particular point in the journey of wanting to become president, can they be challenged and told, okay, at this point you need to make sure that you only have 1 citizenship, as an example. Same thing with the head of the army. It's really only at the point at which you are...
What's wrong with having head of the army with dual citizenship?
People believe
in
that
case you go to war with the other country.
Yeah. Somebody used that as an example to me. What happens the day Botswana goes to war with Norway? I had to smile.
Or even if the two clash in a football game and your son is a football, then they decide. You can decide which side.
Yeah.
I've seen it with Germans and Ghanaians. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So yes, it might be unstrategic that certain portfolios an individual has dual citizenship. I understand that, but that doesn't apply to everybody. And it only applies at the point at which they are about to step into those shoes. And in the same way that you do a due diligence process for anything, at that point you would then assess, okay, you meet this criteria, you meet that criteria, oh, whoops, you need to sort this one out. It's not more complicated than that in my view. And loyalty is loyalty, Even if you have 1 citizenship, there are multiple situations that people's loyalties are always tested. They're not just about nationality, they're about many other things. So we cannot be using the sentiment of loyalty to say that this is going to be undermining us as a nation. Then we're not a thinking nation.
Which we should be. Yeah. Now, now that this huge milestone has been done away with, what is the plan for you as Sithabile Mathe and for your company? What is if anything, what is a big, audacious goal if you're talking 10, 15 years as a result of having overcome this huge obstacle?
At the end of the day, I'm a parent, and my children are paramount to me. If you haven't had children, I think it's always a very difficult thing to explain.
Well, I have 4.
No, that's what I'm saying. For people who haven't had children,
yeah.
It's always a very difficult thing to explain. And literally, my big audacious goal is I want my children to finish their higher education. I want them to establish independent lives. I want them to feel fulfilled in whatever they do. And they may or may not have children of their own. That's their decision. But I want them to take charge of the opportunities that this decision has given them, to take charge of those opportunities, celebrate those opportunities. And when that big audacious goal is achieved, at every milestone of that big audacious goal, I'll be celebrating every milestone, and every milestone will be about each step that they take in this. And that's it for them, and it's no different for me. It's no different for me. It's about ensuring my parents have a great quality of, my mother has a great quality of life where she is, that my husband and I have a great quality of life. That's really the big audacious goal.
No, it makes
Everything else is secondary.
Okay. No, that makes sense to me. That makes sense for me. So, but even for your business, since this is an entrepreneurship show, do you have, has the decision impacted your business?
Absolutely.
Negatively or positively? And if so, how?
For a few years, it was definitely a negative impact. When we were awarded government contracts, we were told that there had been political instructions to withdraw those contracts to us.
Really?
Because we were suing, the director of that company is suing the government. So for sure it has. And I think that's when you asked, shouldn't this be... I have had a very negative experience in that time of what happens when you challenge power. I definitely have. And
you just denied tenders. For what reason? Maybe you should have challenged that one as well. Then
we did challenge and we did win.
Oh, that one as well?
Yes.
Oh. So, but still the stigma remained or something.
Absolutely. I mean, it actually, in a recent, the same entity that we had sued and won against in court, when they reissued the same tender, they put out a section saying, if you have previously sued us, we should be able to disqualify you in this tender. It's just like, what?
Really?
We sue you because you're up to no nonsense. And
you could have challenged that again, but it meant spending all your life in court.
Yeah, but no, we raised it as a concern at the time, and they did withdraw it. But I'm just saying it hasn't just been positive. It hasn't. I have definitely felt a lot of pressure. I've had many uncomfortable phone calls, for sure. And I just hope that now people see that this was of benefit to the country, and I just hope that people understand that I've done this because I love the country that I've been raised in and that I plan to be in, and I want to make sure that my children can also be here.
You're a hero and a hero at the same time. And I don't know about my viewers. This woman is a hero, guys. She's a hero. Listen, now that the milestone has been overcome, are you now going to be spending 6 months in Norway, 6 months here in terms of your practice? How does it going to work practically?
So I've always gone up and down. It's been very important for me to continue working in Norway. The professional challenges there are different. I have long-standing relationships with colleagues and different practices. That has been important, that I never stop doing that. We co-collaborate with Norwegian companies on projects here, on projects there. That has always been the case, and it's not going to change. So I'm always going up and down. Yeah. And that's not going to really change.
So time for a shameless plug then, to tell people what it is that you do, your company does, so that people know that, look, you're not out there just to fight great causes. You do get work done.
Architecture, urban design, town planning, interior design, landscape design. That's what we do.
Okay. So to an average entrepreneur out there, what would you be able to do for them?
If someone is looking to start a new business and they either have existing premises that they need to refurbish, we can help them with that. Or if they want to build a new building, we can help them with that. If they've got a large piece of land that they don't have ideas of what to do, and we can help them with a business feasibility, a design feasibility for what they can do with their property. Yeah,
okay.
Those kind of things.
And since you were last here, just asking for the show, how has it been? How has the people responded to your coming to Mogobe Nuggets since your last. It's been a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, I've only heard positive comments.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, I guess it's from people who know me personally. So yeah, mostly it's been
That's
positive.
good, and thanks for coming again. Now is that time?
Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah,
and giving me an opportunity to talk about this.
Yes,
and I hope this will help other people. Like I said, my expectation was that BTV would be interested, that the newspapers would be interested, but it's been like radio silence. You're the first person that has
I'm
wanted
to but
hear.
You'll be very surprised after this thing airs. You'll be getting a lot of calls. You'll be very surprised. But let me ask you this as we conclude. Do you have any question for me, madam?
What do you see as the best thing about this change in law?
Normalization. Things are normal. I mean, we had a president who was born in the UK and ran the country for 10 years. These issues never came up. And I know for a fact that there was a time we had an advocate, I don't think I should mention his name, who crossed over to South Africa and then came back here and persisted in his position, and he was writing in the newspapers that dual citizenship is allowed. He interpreted the law the way he interpreted it and enjoyed the benefits. And I know for a fact that a lot of Botswana have been benefiting from having one parent being born in South Africa and one parent being... So these things have been happening. Dual citizenship has been going on. What you've done with your case is you've really clarified it now. You've made the law clear. So it's something I celebrate. At a personal level, I think it's going to help my sister-in-law. Tiny Anderson, my sister-in-law, was heartful about this. She was suffering. She was endlessly talking about this. But ever since you won, she doesn't even bring it up around the...
She's the one, actually, I have to give her credit for the tagline, which was, Duali Dule.
Hey, Duali Dule.
Duali Dule.
Which is really true. Idule Dua.
Duali Dule.
Yeah.
Idule, because she would always phone me and say, Idule Sita, Duali Dule, Idule, Idule, Duali, Idule, Dule.
Yeah, she was
and
always
so
when
the judgment, when we were done at the appeals court and everything, I sent her a Duali Dule Salam.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So at a personal family level, there's a huge relief because I have relatives in Norway specifically, and in Sweden. So I'm happy for my people. So I'm really, really excited. Yeah. You did well. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for taking on this fight. It was well worth it.
Thank you.
Now, as we conclude our conversation, do you mind looking at that I nearly said phone, that camera, and sharing one last encouraging, motivational message as we wrap up?
I think it's, like I said, to say to anybody that if you think, something needs to be changed and it has an impact beyond just yourself, I think this should demonstrate that you shouldn't give up. It's been 5 years in the courts to get us to where we are now.
Yeah, it's really about grit and perseverance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it must have affected you financially big time.
Yes.
Anyway, just conclude your message to the viewer.
Yeah, so don't give up. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, what you need to share is all your contacts, including on social media, so people can interact with you if they need to.
The best way to get hold of me is on email, smate@moralodesigns.com. If you're looking for our professional services, our landline is 393-5310. And you can always go onto our website, moralodesigns.com, and you have all our contact details on the website as well.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.